people ask me like, hey, well, what's the biggest thing I can do for my network? My answer is always start a podcast or some other platform. It has to be you start a platform that you own.
Hey everybody, welcome back to a SUBTA Studios Friday Live. I'm your host, Chris George, co-founder and chairman of SUBTA. Really exciting today. I have Travis Chappell, who runs the Build Your Network podcast. He's a legend in the podcast world. And he's here to talk to us about podcasting, the benefits of podcasting, and building your network. Travis, thanks so much for being on.
Happy to be here, man. Thanks for having me, Chris.
So I got a chance to look at some of your podcasts, and man, I saw just like what a lineup you've had sometimes there on there, and some great speakers, and truly amazing what you've been able to build. And I know you run a course on this as well, right? And why don't you just give a quick background on yourself and let everybody know who you are?
Sure, man. So, my name's Travis. Grew up in a kind of a small town in Southern California called Lancaster. It was in LA County, but I also grew up in a strange kind of religious bubble inside of that community. So, it was kind of a unique, mixture of things growing up. And so to give you an idea of the type of bubble that I'm talking about, I went to kindergarten, 8th grade, high school, and college all the way through. Graduated all of those on the same campus, the same 40-acre campus, which was also where I went to church. So pretty much my entire life was lived on this campus until the time I graduated college. I graduated college at the college that was on the same campus, obviously, like I just said. And my degree, it was a ministerial college, so my degree was in Bible and church ministries. By the time I was graduating, though, I realized that's not really what I wanted to do with my life. And but at that point, I didn't really have anything else to do. My entire network, but my entire, everybody that I knew, all the influence, the authority, people that were in my life, friends, family, everything was kind of in this world. And so when I decided that I wanted to be outside of that world, I didn't really know what to do or where to go or how to even get started. And so I did the only thing that I knew how to do at the time, which was door-to-door sales. And I just did door-to-door after graduating college because it frankly just paid me a lot more money in fewer hours of work than it would have if I were, just going to start over with some random career working at a job and getting paid $35,000 a year, So I just did door-to-door sales and it was 100% commission for a few years. And after seeing a fair amount of success with it, I basically was just like, I don't want to do this anymore. And it wasn't even necessarily that like I was done with it right then. It was just that when I looked into the future, like 10 years down the road, I was like, I don't know if 32 or 33-year-old Travis is meant to be knocking on doors still.
What were you selling?
So I started in alarms, I started in solar, and then I jumped to alarms, and then I ended in water purification. So several different products, multiple industries.
If you can do door-to-door sales, you probably can do anything.
It's a good training ground.
To get a lot of no's, right?
Oh yeah, no, it's a good training ground for rejection, man. And as you know, entrepreneurship is nothing but that. It's just rejection after rejection after rejection, and you have to learn how to not only be able to take those rejections without quitting, but also be able to go find somebody who will eventually say yes, and then start getting better at turning more of those no's into yeses, and definitely teaches you that. So did that for a few years. And when I was trying to make a pivot, didn't know what to do, I basically quit on a dime, because once I figure out that I don't want to do something anymore, it's really difficult for me to stay engaged in that thing. And it's not like it was a regular 9-to-5, right? I couldn't just show up knocking 100% commission doors and half-ass it and still make money. You know what I mean? Like, you got to be engaged in that, or else you're not going to make any money. So I basically just stopped doing it, and then took a few months off and was just trying to figure out really what I wanted to be doing. I was doing the work of a 15-year-old when I was, 23, with a mortgage to pay and a wife living at home, and all that kind of stuff. And so my wife started working during that time to pick up my slack, and we sold a part of a real estate deal that we were in to cash out and just give us some runway. And I was trying to figure out what was gonna come next, man. And podcast, I for the first time in my life dove head first into personal development and trying to learn as much as I could, just because, like I said, I felt like it was a back against the wall type of a moment. Like, what are you gonna do now? Life circumstances have brought you to this point. It is what it is. Would I have liked to have more opportunity and been told some different career paths, sure. But at this point, this is the hand I was dealt. So figure it out, basically. So I just started learning as much as I could, and YouTube videos, podcasts, audiobooks, regular books, which if you knew me before, you know how big of a deal that was, because I was never a reader. I never did any sort of learning outside of school. I really liked to play sports and just kind of hang out with friends, and that was what I did. I hated reading, and so when I started reading, it was literally like a life-changing thing for the people in my life. They were like, "Wait, is that a book that you have?" And so at that point, after listening to a ton of podcasts in that same world, because I definitely liked to listen to podcasts, listen to audiobooks. I like to do that more than read books. And after doing it for a while, I was just like, this podcast thing seems like a pretty interesting way to make a living. Like, I don't know how to do it really. And I don't know how to, I don't even know how to podcast, let alone how to monetize one, but people are doing it. So sure, I can figure it out if I go talk to those people and see how they're doing it. And started a podcast and kind of haven't, looked back since. And that was almost 4 years ago. Almost 4 years ago. Yeah.
How did you decide what you were going to talk about on that podcast?
That's a good question. So the very first idea that came to mind was selling, because that was all I really knew how to do. That was the only thing I had any sort of expertise in. And I go to iTunes, and I knew enough at the time. I didn't know a ton, Chris, but I knew enough at the time that I knew that I needed to niche down. I knew that I needed to find the blue ocean, a space or an area or an angle that other people weren't playing in, so that I could kind of own that space. And I looked up selling, and there's 200, probably 500 podcasts out there about how to sell. And I was like, man, this is a really saturated space, and it's owned by a lot of people that are extremely well known, right? Like the Grant Cardones of the world that are teaching selling. So like, who's going to listen to this, 24-year-old kid that's been on doors for 4 years, 5 years? So I immediately just kind of shifted into something else. And I was like, okay, well, what's the reason that I would attribute to my, quote unquote success in sales up to that point? And the answer was, I was just pretty good at getting around people who were better than I was at it, and learning as much as I could from them. And not even just, I think people mess up on this one because they only think of it in like a context where you're learning directly from them about that skill set. For me, it was always just like, I want to get around these people as much as I possibly can. So, and whenever there's an opportunity, when opportunity presents itself, it's hanging out at somebody's house, it's going to dinner, it's going on a trip, it's going to a club, it's going to, wherever I can like hang out with these types of people and get whatever they're on, right? Like get a little piece of their mindset or how they think or the way they view the world or whatever helps them be successful in this. I need to do that. So the idea of networking came up because I was like, this seems like a really clear path to being able to, do well in life, is just going and finding the people who are crushing it in the game that you want to be crushing it in, and getting to know them and being around them as much as you can. And so that's where the idea for Build Your Network came out. And I go back to iTunes, search networking. I thought it was going to be all over the place, just like sales was, because everybody knows how important it is to build a network. Yep. But to my surprise, it just wasn't. There wasn't one particular show. Like there's a lot of shows that touch on it all the time, and they have different episodes that'll talk about it. But there was not one show that was just dedicated purely to that topic. So I just kind of ran with it.
I feel like, it's always said, like, that you'll hear the term, your network is your worth. You'll hear things like that.
Yeah.
It's interesting because I feel like it's probably said more than people acting on it.
Yep.
Right.
100%. No, couldn't have said it better, man. Yep.
Yeah. Like you need like that. It's so valuable. And I joke about a lot of times how one time I was sitting at dinner with like the founder of like Wish and the founder of Whisper. Like these are like guys that are like, I don't know, worth $500 million. And I'm like sitting there like Googling under the table, like the terms they're saying. This is and like
that's how you know you're at the right table,
like,
man.
Now I consider that same table and like really engage in a good conversation. Like they might they'd be looking at me and like how to maximize their subscription. But the truth is like I built that network. I got to sit at that table and you like have to take full advantage of it. And
100%.
So let's touch a little bit about podcasts, because one, we know content is king, especially now, like more than ever. And people should probably be talking about, if they're running a brand, so a lot of our listeners, they're subscription brands, right?
Yep.
And them putting out content can only drive like thought leadership and awareness to what they're doing. What's your suggestion for a lot of them about why they should start one, and why are they so popular right now more than ever?
Yeah, that's a good question, man. And there's so many reasons. I guess the thing that I would say is that if you're somebody, if you're watching this, listen to this right now, and you have always told yourself you didn't need a podcast because you're not trying to get listeners, you're not trying to be famous, you don't want to be the next Tim Ferriss or Gary Vee, like that's not you, that's not what you want to do. Put that all on the back burner. Like, don't even think about it. Don't even think about who's watching, who's listening, who's paying attention. Don't think about any of that. Only focus on the biggest relationships that you want to develop inside of your business. Everybody's got them, right? Is it a relationship with a vendor? Do you need to bring your costs down? Do you need to get better at your subscription revenue? Do you need to do better with your marketing? Do you need to do better with your fulfillment, with your shipping? How, like, there's constant needs in every single person's business that's watching this right now. Make a list of all of the people that could potentially help you solve the problems that you're facing as a CEO or as a manager or a biz dev owner or whatever. And then build an interview show that allows you to go have conversations with all of those people. Now, I call a podcast your number one business development employee. That's the way that I refer to a podcast, especially for most businesses. Because bottom line is, you're right. You're probably right. You will probably never get 1 million downloads a month. Probably not. Okay, but that's okay, right? You don't need 1 million downloads a month in order for it to be worth your time. You just need the relationships, the knowledge, the skill sets, the communication, everything else that comes with having a podcast. Yep. So not only does it, do wonders for your network. Everybody always asks me, right? Because my podcast is about networking, right? So I talk a lot about podcasting. I talk about a lot about networking, and people ask me like, "Hey, well, what's the biggest thing I can do for my network?" And my answer is always start a podcast or some other platform. It has to be you start a platform that you own.
You're going to build a relationship with them by having a show.
Exactly. Just because you have the platform available, right? So Chris, like how much has having the event that you guys run with SUBTA affected your network?
Yeah, I mean, it dramatically changed it.
Of course, because you hold an asset that big movers and shakers in your industry want a piece of. Mm-hmm. That's the whole thing. You hold an asset. You have an audience full of subscription box owners or subscription company owners. And anybody who wants a fragment of that audience wants to be on your stage, which makes you the belle of the ball, which gives you the ability to go connect with all these people.
When you say it like that, because right now we obviously run a podcast through SUBTA, right? You're on right now. But it's funny because in 2016, the reason we started SubSummit was because I wanted to network with the individuals that were in the industry. And I thought, well, what's the only way I can get Michael from FabFitFun's email, which now we're good friends, is, I hosted an event and I made him a keynote speaker. Yeah. And I could have actually started a podcast probably then. And by now, or 5 years later, I'd probably running the biggest D2C sub podcast in the world, and probably we took a different approach. But you're right, man. Gosh, it's a great way to look at it.
It's building a platform. Where a platform that you own, that's yours, where you build an audience, like where you hold the asset. And the reason I like podcasting is just that it, frankly, is just easier and cheaper to get started. Like running a live event, that's a really great way to build a network, but it's also extremely expensive and really risky. You know what I mean? So doing a podcast, like this setup that I have now is, a couple $1,000, but I started with a $60 USB mic from Amazon, and I had that for 3 years. Like, I didn't upgrade to this until like late last year. You know what I mean? So, you don't need all the fancy stuff to get started with a podcast, especially now because 2020 normalized Zoom interviews like crazy. Even all the A-list celebrities are doing Zoom interviews on the Conan O'Brien show and Jimmy Fallon and all these late night hosts and everybody that's doing these big interviews. They're all doing Zoom interviews now. Like, Zoom interviews are extremely normalized. So start a podcast. The $60 mic costs $200 to $400 a month to produce. And now you have, again, I call it your number one biz dev employee. Right? Like, this is the number one employee for your business development. And whether it's you hosting it or your actual business development person in your company that's hosting it, or whoever is hosting it, right? Like, the point is you're getting the opportunity to connect with all of the movers and shakers in your space and allowing you to build your network with all those people. And then, like, bro, for me, I almost use my podcast sometimes as like selfish coaching calls, because I get on these calls with these people that are doing crazy business with like mind-blowing amounts of money that they've made in their lifetime. And they've figured out the game. And so I have 30, 45 minutes with them for free on a podcast episode. Even if I have to pay them to come on, it still makes sense because I still get all of that learning, that knowledge, that information. And it gives me an opportunity to connect with these people. And nothing else would have given me that opportunity.
A lot of other inherent value, right? There's other things that could happen because you had them on your podcast and you built a relationship with them.
100%.
So I just thought right now, like, let's say I had a workout subscription. And so now I'm running a podcast about working out, healthy living. And then I bring on the founder of Lifetime Fitness to talk. And then all of a sudden now Lifetime Fitness is like promoting our subscription to all of its members. Like, right? Anything can happen. And like, you don't know who you're going to meet.
Yep.
The partnership that might build. And now this biz dev person, which is the podcast, literally got you got an interview with somebody that now changed the course of your life.
And it's so inexpensive to find out if it works.
Yep.
You know what I mean? Just commit to 12 months. Even if it's only one interview a week, 12 months, one interview a week costs me, like I said, if you're only doing one interview a week, $300, $400 a month to produce. You know what I mean? Like, and then you interview the top people in your space.
What is
it? You know, you fast forward a full year. That's what you spent $5,000 to figure out if this could bring in a relationship that could turn into $1 million in top line revenue for your organization because of a relationship you built with somebody that wouldn't have given you the time of day if you just cold called them and asked them to jump on a sales call. You know what I'm saying? Like it's the secret weapon, man. Not enough people are using it as the foot in the door.
Right. What is what's the cadence that you like? Like for a pod, how many should it be one a week? Like
it should be at least one a week to stay relevant. The answer is always the more the better. You know, the more content that you can put out, the better, in my opinion, with a couple of caveats. I always tell people, release as much content as you possibly can without sacrificing quality, consistency, or your sanity.
Right.
Those are the three things.
Sometimes I have this theory that like I just like to get content out, and it doesn't have to always look perfect or right? Like
better done than perfect.
Lives is because it saves on the like post production, editing time. Right. Now we can pump up more content. What's your thoughts on like some people thinking it has to be perfect, or I have to look perfect, or I care? Like, what if only 2 people listen? I mean, like that probably happened to you, right? Your first podcast probably had like what, a couple listeners, and then your mom and dad.
Happened to me for like 2 years, bro. Happened to me for like 2 years, but and to be fair, like I was starting from scratch, you know, so a lot of people watching and listening right now could probably start off with a leg up on me from when I started. But yeah, it was like 1.5 to 2 years before I really started seeing any sort of traction with the show. And that was putting out 3 interviews a week, not 3 episodes, like 3 interviews per week for 2 years. And I wasn't seeing much traction with it. So yeah, like that's just part of the process. And then to your other point, it's better done than perfect. Just get it out there. Because the bottom line is this. Evan Carmichael told me this one time, and he's got like a 2 million plus subscriber YouTube channel. And he was just like, expect to suck. And it's okay. Just expect to suck. Especially like if you've never been on camera, if you've never been, you know, a broadcaster, podcaster on radio, if you've never created content for anything that you've done, you can't expect to just jump into the microphone and have amazing content day one. You know, some people might have that, but you shouldn't expect, like, that's what I'm saying. Expect to suck is like, if you don't suck, then like, great. You know what I mean? But if you expect to be really good and you do suck, then you're not going to create video number 2 and you're never going to release video number 1. You know what I mean? So It's better done than perfect. Just put in the reps and get yourself there. You know what I mean? Like now at this point, we've done almost 600 episodes on our show, and I've been interviewed on probably, I don't know, 150, 200 other shows, you know, so there's like almost 1,000 episodes that have been a part of or created in the last 3 or 4 years. You just inherently get better every time you do something. And at first I sucked and it was not very fun. It was actually pretty uncomfortable trying to navigate hosting an interview. But after you do it a bunch, you know, it turns into something that you look forward to and enjoy.
When were you able to start to get some of the A list interviewees, right? Like,
sure.
Like for me, I got Gary V on one time. That was like awesome off the bucket list. We took a different approach when we got him. But you got some really good names up on there. When were you really able to like start to pull them?
I did at the beginning, but it was just a little bit more few and far between at that point. But I always, shot my shot. I always went for it. Like it. Probably a little bit too early. In retrospect, I probably should have waited a little bit longer, but I was just eager to get there because I knew one thing. There's a Steve Martin quote that I had written on the top of my whiteboard, which is be so good they can't ignore you. And when I looked at that, that was really what I needed to see, because at the time I wasn't good at all. And I, like I said, had no experience in the online world. I was not an entrepreneur. I was just a door-to-door sales guy, sales manager, trainer. That was basically all I did. So when I came into this space, I was like, I got to be really good at this. But how do you get good at something really quickly when you've never done it before? Like, I need to, be so good they can't ignore me. How am I supposed to compete with all these people that have been doing this for years and have these giant audiences? And then it just kind of hit me that, like, well, if I talk to a good enough guest, it doesn't even matter if I'm a crappy interviewer at that point. Yeah. Because people are still going to tune in, because it's like, whoa, you got Barack Obama, you know what I mean? Like, just throwing out a random name, but that I understood that principle at the time, which was, if I got a big enough guest, almost everybody I know would tune in. You know what I mean? And so I just kind of started building that list and going for the top people that I could find in the space. And, all you got to do is get those first 1, 2, or 3 people to give you a shot before you deserve a shot. Right. And the only way that you find those people is by reaching out to like 10 times the amount of people that you need to give you a shot. You know what I mean? Like, you reach out to 25 people, but if 2 of them give you a shot, that's all you need, because now you can leverage the 2 names that gave you a shot to go get some more people, and then more people, and then more people. And then, the heavy lifting's at the beginning when you're pushing. It's like pushing a boulder uphill. It's like you takes a lot of work to get that baby up there. But then as soon as you go to the other side and you push it down, it's rolling down for you, and you got to run to catch up with it. And that's kind of like, the same thing that happens when it comes to the quality of people that you interview on your show. Is like, quality people have one question in their minds: are you going to waste my time? They don't necessarily care about your reach. They don't necessarily care about your downloads. Like, that is a factor, right? Because that factor is a factor in the do you waste my time question, right? Because if they never know you, if they don't know you from Adam, but they know that you have an audience of 1 million people tuning into an episode, they're going to say yes, right? Because they know it's not a waste of their time to go on your show. But that's only one factor. There's other things that contribute to whether or not this is going to be a waste of my time. And like I said, it's not always the downloads factor. So don't discount yourself and think, I got to wait 5 years before I, reach out to that person or this person. You just got to understand what they want and what they need and what they're concerned about, and make sure you answer those concerns when you reach out.
One thing that's worked well for myself, and even SubSummit and getting speakers, right? Because the speaker is who drives people to attend, things like that. Is in some cases it's not always the speaker, but sometimes the brand, right? So getting somebody from the brand there.
Yeah.
So I found that when you sometimes go for, like, you can't get the founder, so then you get the next level below. So let's say it's C-level exec or some like head of marketing, because that individual in a lot of cases is somebody that's trying to work on their personal profile. Like, they want to build their personal profile and their speaking engagements. So they're eager, like they're ready to like jump on. So like, maybe I can't get the founder of HelloFresh, but I can get a CMO.
Yeah.
You get the attention of the audience is that HelloFresh is coming on the podcast.
Yeah,
right?
Totally.
That CMO is trying to build his personal profile. He wants his LinkedIn. He wants to be a speaker in an event. So I think that approach sometimes works well. I think for you, because you're kind of targeting an individual, right? Like, but I mean, other people running podcasts, sometimes it's just going after somebody else within the company, right?
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's whatever moves the needle of credibility. Right. Like, that's the number one reason to have a podcast, is for the interviews. The second reason is for the credibility and authority that it brings to you. Because you got to think about, if you go to do business with somebody and you look them up online and you can't find their website, how much does that say about that person to you? Like, if they're like, this is the name of my website, and then you go Google the name of their website and it's still not coming up on page 1 of Google, it's like, you know what I mean? Like, having a podcast is just another thing that just gives them another thing to look at and listen to and see that, again, if you only have 5 minutes to go find out who Travis Chappell is, and you Google my name, and then my website's the first thing that pops up, and you click on it and you see featured, guests of my show, and it's all these people that love, trust, and recognize. You assign a certain level of that know, love, and trust to me, even though you've never met me before, because you're like, if all of these people are willing to share, quote unquote, share the stage with Travis, then he must not be a bad guy. Like, they may not know, love, and trust you to the extent that they know, love, and trust all those other people, but they will definitely, like, you'll piggyback off of that credibility and that authority. And that's half people's battles in business, I think, is getting their customers to trust that they have the best solution to their problem. Yeah. And, trust is a byproduct of having large credibility and authority in your marketplace.
It's amazing. Travis, clearly you know a ton about this. Congrats on the success, 600 plus episodes. That's truly amazing. You also run a course, I think, right, on like helping people build podcasts. You want to just talk about that briefly and how someone can get in touch with you if they want to start to build one?
Sure. Yeah. So it's called Podcast Profit Academy. Our goal is to help entrepreneurs build profitable podcasts. So, if you're kind of a hobby podcaster, this probably isn't a good fit, but anybody that owns a business and wants to know how to turn a podcast into a profitable arm of their business, we have an academy for that. So the best way to get in touch with that is to check out our free training that we put together, Podcast Profit Secrets. We go through the 3 secrets that everybody needs in order to be able to build a profitable podcast. You can learn a ton from that free training. And then at the end of that free training, we do offer the access into the Podcast Profit Academy, but that's the only way that we do it. You got to go through the free training just to kind of get an idea of how we work and the things that we teach to make sure that it's a good fit. And then from there, you can jump into the academy. So you can find that at podcastprofitcourse.com. podcastprofitcourse.com. You can register for that webinar.
We'll have someone put that in the comments there, so everybody watching this will check it out. And I know some of you will be seeing this post live because it stays around. If you have questions, feel free to throw them in the comments or DM myself or Travis. Again, Travis, this was awesome, and let me know if you ever want me on your podcast when I'm almost at one of those levels that'll work for you. But happy
100%.
to talk about subscriptions or D2C subscriptions or just entrepreneurship. I have a strong passion for talking about entrepreneurship. So again, thanks a ton, Travis, for being on the show today. For those of you listening, thank you for watching. Next week, I got Dave Colbin coming on, who was formerly running the subscriptions for Nike, which was going to be pretty awesome. So he's going to be on the show next Friday. Travis, I hope you have an amazing weekend. Looking forward to staying connected, and let me know. Let's keep in touch.
Appreciate it, Chris. Thanks so much for having me on.
Of course. Have a good day.